On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber called the Enola Gay left a small Pacific island called Tinian and headed for the Japanese city of Hiroshima. It was carrying a top-secret weapon that would change warfare forever. The world's first atomic weapon. Little did the Japanese know that within a few hours, their country would be irrevocably changed. The detonation of the device in the sky above them would lead to unprecedented destruction and death. But why did the US decide to drop this weapon on Japan? And how did it end World War II? Let's find out. Hi guys! Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be discussing what happened when Japan dropped an atomic bomb. But before we start, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new videos. The path to World War II began in the early 1930s with the rise of fascism in Europe. Japan, under the rule of a military junta, sought territorial expansion and supremacy in Asia. The war began in 1939 with Germany's invasion of Poland, quickly engulfing much of Europe. Japan joined the conflict in 1940, forming the Axis alliance with Germany and Italy. By 1945, the tide of the war had turned. The Germans had been pushed back, and the Soviets advanced steadily toward Berlin. In the Pacific, the U.S. had replaced the Dutch East Indies as Japan's chief adversary after the Japanese failed to achieve their goal of dominating Southeast Asia. The Allies trapped the Japanese in a shrinking area around Japan proper, and both sides prepared for a final showdown. The Americans expected fierce resistance from the Japanese, especially from their navy, which was second only to the U.S. Navy. For months, Japan refused to surrender despite heavy losses. They hoped that the United States would grow weary of the war and seek a negotiated peace. This strategy was not without success, as President Truman campaigned for peace rather than total victory. However, with the fall of Berlin and the advance of Soviet troops, the situation changed dramatically. On July 25th, the Potsdam Conference took place between the three victorious powers, the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union. They issued an ultimatum to the Japanese demanding unconditional surrender. But Japan's Prime Minister Suzuki rejected the terms, believing they were too harsh. This rejection, along with the Japanese emperor's refusal to abdicate, ended any hopes for a peaceful resolution. As the conference ended on August 2nd, the fate of Japan was sealed. The Potsdam Declaration gave Japan an opportunity to avoid total annihilation. By August, American forces were massing for the invasion of southern Japan, codenamed Operation Downfall. This would have been a costly affair, as the Japanese had constructed an extensive network of fortifications in anticipation of just such an invasion. Moreover, the Japanese leadership had ordered civilians to fight to the death rather than surrender. The decision to develop the atomic bomb had been taken in 1939 after the Germans invaded Poland. As the war dragged on, the Americans came to realize that conventional weapons would be insufficient to win a quick victory over the Japanese. With casualties mounting on both sides, the development of a weapon of unprecedented destructive power became a top priority. Under the direction of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the first atomic bomb was successfully tested in New Mexico on July 16, 1945. Dubbed the Trinity Test. Its power was devastating, releasing 200 trillion watts of energy in a flash that could be seen from 200 miles away. The weapon's potential became clear, and the military leaders saw an opportunity to end the war quickly and save countless lives. However, choosing the target for the first atomic attack was a difficult decision. Several cities were considered, including Tokyo, Japan's largest metropolis, but ultimately, Hiroshima was selected due to its strategic importance as a military and industrial center. Additionally, the city's geographic location made it ideal for an air raid. Hiroshima had been largely spared during the war, making it likely that the full force of the bomb would be felt there. On August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay took off from Tinian carrying the little boy atomic bomb. The crew had no idea of the devastation they were about to unleash. The target was sighted, and the plane flew over Hiroshima. At an altitude of 31,000 feet, at 8:15 a.m., the bomb was dropped. As the plane reached its target, a red button was pressed, triggering the bomb's nuclear reaction. A blinding flash filled the sky, followed by a mushroom cloud that rose 30,000 feet into the air. The explosion was equivalent to 13,000 tons of TNT, and the heat generated was enough to ignite buildings within 10 miles of the blast. The first atomic bomb had been detonated. Within seconds, The full force of the bomb was felt in Hiroshima. The intense heat and light from the explosion caused widespread destruction, leveling entire neighborhoods. The shockwave from the blast shattered windows and collapsed buildings. People were thrown through the air and their clothing ignited by the intense heat. Those who survived the initial blast were met with a deadly rain of debris and pulverized concrete, but it was the radiation from the explosion that truly made the atomic bomb a terrifying weapon. Those who survived the initial blast and the ensuing firestorm were exposed to high levels of radiation, which caused severe burns and ultimately led to radiation poisoning. Many of these survivors died within weeks or months of the bombing. The destruction wrought by the atomic bomb was unprecedented. Entire city blocks were wiped off the map, and tens of thousands of people were killed instantly. The bombing of Hiroshima sent shockwaves around the world. The Japanese government was stunned by the immense destructive power of the weapon, and the world marveled at the devastation. But for the Japanese people, the horror was far from over. On August 9, 1945, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki, another important industrial and military center. Like Hiroshima, Nagasaki was largely spared during the war, making it an ideal target for the second atomic attack. The Fat Man, as the Nagasaki bomb was codenamed, was more powerful than the little boy that devastated Hiroshima. Its plutonium-239 core produced a blast equivalent to 62,000 tons of TNT. The explosion completely destroyed the city and the surrounding areas. The bombing of Nagasaki came as a shock to the Japanese, who had not been expecting a second atomic attack so soon. The two bombings in quick succession demonstrated the overwhelming military superiority of the United States, and the Japanese people knew that further resistance was futile. On September 2, 1945, Japan officially surrendered, ending World War II. The terms of the surrender were dictated by the Allies and included the demand for the unconditional surrender of all Japanese forces and the return of all prisoners of war. The instrument of surrender was signed aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945, marking the end of hostilities. The use of atomic bombs in World War II had far-reaching implications for the future of warfare. The unprecedented destructive power of these weapons demonstrated the potential for total annihilation and ushered in the atomic age. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain a dark chapter in human history, a reminder of the horrors of war and the destructive potential of nuclear weapons. In the aftermath of the war, the United States emerged as a global superpower. The country's development of the atomic bomb had given it a decisive advantage over its enemies and set the stage for the Cold War that would dominate the latter half of the 20th century. The impact of the atomic bombs on the Japanese people was profound. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed hundreds of thousands of people and left many more wounded or suffering from radiation poisoning. The cities were devastated and the country's economy and infrastructure were severely damaged. In the decades since then, the Japanese have rebuilt their country and emerged as a major economic power. But the memory of the atomic bombings remains fresh in the minds of many Japanese, who view them as a tragedy and a warning of the dangers of nuclear weapons. Today, the sites of the atomic bombings are preserved as peace memorials. They serve as a reminder of the horrors of war and a call for peace and understanding. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain a pivotal moment in history, a turning point that marked the beginning of the atomic age and the end of World War II. The use of nuclear weapons in wartime has had implications for the future of warfare and the role of the United States in global politics, and the legacy of these bombings continues to shape the world today. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe for more informative content. Thanks for watching. See you next time.